After Morgoth destroys the Tree of Light, a legion of elves leaves Valinor for Middle-earth, taking the fight to him. Eventually, he and his trusty dark servant, Sauron, are defeated. Afterward, the battle becomes memory, but Galadriel, Finrod's sister, feels otherwise, believing Sauron to still be alive somewhere. Her instincts are rewarded when she finds Sauron's mark, the same one that came with Finrod's corpse, in Forodwaith. However, with her group unable to push forward with the search, they all return to Lindon, the capital of the High Elves. There, she meets Elrond, a friend who convinces her to abandon her search for Sauron and return home to Valinor. Though not keen on the idea, Galadriel seems helpless, even more so when the High King Gil-galad proclaims the war to be truly over and Sauron to be no more, and as a reward, sends her back home. In Tirharad, a small human village, Arondir, an elvish soldier stationed to watch over the village, refuses to return to Valinor with the rest of the soldiers, because he's in love with Bronwyn, the village's healer. While at her home, a sick cow is brought for treatment. Given the peculiarity of the illness, Arondir and Bronwyn travel to Horndon, where the cow last grazed, to determine the cause of the illness. Concurrently, Theo, Bronwyn's son, happens upon a broken sword carrying Sauron's symbol. At Lindon, Gil-galad gives Elrond a task to accomplish with Celebrimbor, one of the greatest elvish smiths, after telling him that Galadriel's suspicions about Sauron might be right. Meanwhile, in Rovanion, a village of Harfoot hobbits, Nori goes to investigate a ball of fire fallen from the sky, and shockingly discovers a giant stranger in its crater. Simultaneously, Galadriel, unable to sideline her suspicions, jumps off the boat, headed for Valinor. Back at Rovanion, the stranger reawakens upon contact with Nori, but returns to sleep almost immediately. At Nori's behest, Poppy helps hide the stranger. Meanwhile, Arondir and Bronwyn, having reached Horndon, find the place deserted and destroyed. After finding a large hole in the ground, Arondir sends Bronwyn back to warn her people, while he goes down to investigate further. At Eregion, the elven city of smiths, Celebrimbor tells Elrond more about their task, the creation of a tower to host the most powerful forge ever built, and the need for a workforce. Having heard this, Elrond seeks help from a friend, Prince Durin IV of the Dwarves. Having got off the boat while it was at sea, Galadriel's been swimming for a while in search of land. Fortunately, she finds a group of shipwrecked survivors that help her onto their makeshift boat. However, almost immediately, disaster strikes when they're attacked by an enormous sea creature. The encounter leaves everybody dead, except her and Halbrand, one of the human survivors. Things are equally bleak with Arondir, as his foray down the tunnel ends in capture at the hands of an orc. Meanwhile, at Tirharad, Bronwyn struggles to get her people out, until she shows them the head of the orc that just attacked her and Theo. Mysteriously, the broken sword Theo finds regrows momentarily upon contact with his blood. Stranded at sea, Galadriel and Halbrand continue to court misfortune until they are found by Elendil, a human sea captain from Numenor. When Arondir awakens, he finds himself in the company of orcs and other captured elves and humans. There, he learns that the orcs have a new leader, Adar, and they are digging the tunnels to get into the Southlands, searching for a weapon. Meanwhile, Galadriel and Halbrand are taken to Numenor, where the people are unfriendly toward elves. When presented to Miriel, the Queen Regent, Galadriel requests for a ship to leave Middle-earth, but is refused. However, upon intervention from Elendil, she ponders on it a little. Galadriel learns about Numenor's Hall of Lore from Elendil, and makes some research on Sauron's symbol when she visits it. There, she learns about Sauron's successor, and that the symbol is actually a map of the Southlands. When she then discovers that Halbrand is the last descendant of the King of the Southlands, because of the necklace he wears. She tries to rope him into the fight against the orcs, but he turns it down. Back at Rovanion, while the Harfoots prepare to migrate to the grove for access to more food, the stranger mistakenly reveals himself, putting Nori and her family in a difficult position. Unable to push their caravan because of Nori's father's broken leg, their family is left behind, but only for a while as the stranger helps them push their caravan after their people's trail. Meanwhile, Arondir's brave attempt at escape gets most of the elves and humans killed. As a result, he's taken to meet Adar. Miriel dreams of her kingdom being destroyed by a great wave. Later that day, she imprisons Galadriel for requesting to see her father, the king, after she turned down Galadriel's proposition to join hands in the fight against orcs. At the prison, Galadriel finds Halbrand, who's there for beating up some men. Back at the Southlands, Arondir shockingly discovers that Adar was once an elf himself. Afterward, he sends Arondir to the Watchtower, where Bronwyn and her people take shelter, to ask them to swear fealty. Meanwhile, Theo gets attacked by orcs while on a supply run. When he uses the broken sword, it becomes clear it's the weapon the orcs are after. Just then, Arondir and Bronwyn step in and save him. In the dwarven kingdom of Khazad-dûm, Durin gifts Elrond a piece of mithril, the secret and strongest metal in the known world, which the dwarves have uncovered in their mines. Afterwards, he confers with his father about Elrond's request and is told to honor it. Meanwhile, Galadriel escapes from prison and goes to see the king. On getting there, she finds Miriel already waiting. Seeing the king's ailing condition, Galadriel asks Miriel why she has cut ties with the elves. In response, Miriel takes Galadriel to a room with a dark orb, a palantir. On contact with the palantir, Galadriel receives the vision Miriel's been dreaming about. After that, Miriel explains that Galadriel's presence provokes the destruction in the vision. However, Miriel decides to join the war effort when she learns that it is her refusal that actually brings about the destruction of Numenor. While the Harfoots and the stranger journey to the grove, a mysterious trio of magic users called the Mystics investigate the site of the fallen star, looking for the stranger. Meanwhile, at the old tower, Bronwyn relays Adar's message to the people and requests they make a stand rather than surrender. However, the people are not exactly on the same page and split up into two groups, comprising those who want to fight, led by Bronwyn, and those who want to surrender, led by Waldrig, one of the villagers. The story isn't too different at Numenor, where some people don't buy the idea of joining the fight. Those who do, however, are trained by Galadriel on the rubrics of killing an orc in battle. At Lindon, Elrond finally gains clarity on the task he's been given. It turns out the Tree of Light is dying, and Gil-galad needs the mithril to restore it. However, Elrond doesn't tell the king he possesses the mithril, since he swore an oath of discretion to Durin. He lets the dwarf in on Gil-galad's plan, and Durin decides to tell his father. So both elf and dwarf journey back. The Harfoots' journey almost becomes one of peril when they're attacked by a pack of wolves, but the stranger steps in and saves the day. Meanwhile, Galadriel convinces Halbrand to assume his position as rightful king of the Southlands and fight alongside the elves. When Adar and his orcs arrive at the old watchtower, they find themselves bested by the traps set by the villagers, who have long since fled the tower. However, that's not enough to steer Adar away from his plan. So at night, he sends the orcs to the village near the watchtower, where the villagers took refuge. The villagers' eagerness to fight quickly turns into horror when they realize it's their own people, the ones who had surrendered, who were leading the first wave of attack. Eventually, Adar wins, and Theo hands the broken sword over. Just when the orcs are about to kill everyone, Galadriel, Halbrand, and Miriel and her army arrive and defeat the orcs, apprehending Adar in the process. Upon Adar's arrest, Galadriel quizzes him about Sauron. but doesn't believe him when he says he killed Sauron, who was trying to fix Middle-earth. Afterward, Galadriel takes the sword from him. Unknown to her, Adar had already switched it out, giving the real one to Waldreg, who uses it to open a dam that pitches water through the orc tunnels into a volcano, causing the volcano, Mount Doom, to erupt and plunging the Southlands into darkness, giving the orcs free reign in these sun-forgotten lands. The explosion from the event knocks Galadriel out momentarily. When she wakes, she finds Theo searching for his mom and joins in. Meanwhile, Isildur, son of Elendil, seemingly gets killed while trying to save some people. When the Harfoots arrive at the grove, they discover to their chagrin that the trees and fruits have been burnt by fire from the volcano. However, their tragedy doesn't last long as the stranger restores the trees and their fruits to life. At Khazad-dûm, Durin's father turns down Elrond's request to dig for Mithril, but Durin keeps digging, going against his father's commands, and realizes that the Mithril runs far deeper into the mountain than they thought. When the king learns of this, he sends Elrond away. Back in the Southlands, Miriel has gone blind, and Elendil learns of his son's supposed death. Everyone retreats to their camp, including Galadriel and Theo. There, they find Bronwyn and Arondir. Trouble then comes knocking for the Harfoots when they're attacked by the three mystics. Immediately after the attack, Nori and the three other Harfoots go to warn the stranger. After the unhappy outcome of their battle, the armies of Numenor return home. Galadriel takes an injured Halbrand back to Eregion, while Miriel gives Bronwyn and her people some land to start a new life. In Khazad-dûm, Durin is stripped of his title as a prince because of his defiance, and the mine is sealed. Back in the Southlands, Adar is shown to have escaped his prison during the volcano eruption and is reunited with his orcs, who call him the Lord of the Southlands, not yet knowing that these dark lands are now called Mordor. At Eregion, while Celebrimbor and Elrond try to use the piece of Mithril they have to save the elven race, Galadriel arrives with Halbrand and asks that he be treated. As Galadriel and Elrond catch up, Celebrimbor takes Halbrand up on his idea to amplify the Mithril using an alloy. Back at Numenor, a few artists and apprentices are selected to create a portrait of the dying king. Elendil's daughter, Arianne, is one of these apprentices, and she gets to see the Palantir after the king mistakes her for Miriel. Gil-galad arrives at Eregion, and after hearing their report on things so far, tells them to return to Valinor before the Tree of Light dies. However, upon intervention from Elrond, he agrees to let them stay a while. During the meeting with Gil-galad, Galadriel hears something that makes her suspicious of Halbrand's identity. So, she makes some research on the royal bloodline of the Southlands and discovers Halbrand has been an imposter as the last king reigned over 1,000 years ago. When Galadriel confronts him, he turns out to be Sauron and wants to bring her over to his side by trying to convince her through a vision that he's been waiting to save Middle-earth. But she turns him down and is then woken by Elrond from the vision, with Halbrand nowhere in sight. Immediately, Galadriel races to Celebrimbor and asks him to make 3 rings instead of 1. In order to give balance in the rings of power, Celebrimbor then uses her brother's sword to amplify the Mithril and goes on to forge the 3 rings. Meanwhile, Nori and her group successfully find the stranger and try to help him, but they're attacked by the mystics looking for the stranger, whom they believe to be Sauron. However, the stranger saves the Harfoots and defeats the mystics, who then realize that he is not Sauron, but an Istari, wizards sent to Middle-earth to fight Sauron. Afterward, Nori abandons her family and leaves with the stranger on his adventure. Back in Numenor, the ship with the queen and soldiers arrives, just as Elendil learns about the king's death. While all of this is going on, Halbrand finally makes his way to Mordor.